Here we are in lesson 4, cells, worksheets and workbooks. We're going to deal with the glaringly obvious parts of Excel and discuss what they are. The first thing that strikes everyone is the rectangles. Unlike any other document, we're greeted with a white page with rectangles all over it, and that's the first thing that people find daunting. These rectangles aren't called rectangles, they're called cells. One cell has a green box around it. That box is telling us that this is the active cell. That means that if I type anything on my keyboard, it's going to appear in that cell. And that's the thing about every single cell. Every cell can hold one thing, and one thing only. I can click anywhere and change the active cell. There's no problem with that at all. The cells I can see are not the limitation of the system. You can see that there are numbers running down the side here. Those numbers are called the row references. So the active cell I've got here is in row 16. And if I click here, I'm now on row 26. Notice it goes to 38. But if I start scrolling, I can go further and further. Now I'm not going to scroll all the way to the bottom because there are over 1 million cells downwards. Now I haven't counted each one, but I have had to travel all the way to the bottom. It takes a long time. The other part of this is along the top. These are not numbers, these are letters. And the letters are the column references. Now I emphasize the letters because if we go to the end, we've got Z, and you might think, well, we'd end at 26, but it doesn't. As soon as you get to Z, it goes AA, AB, AC, all the way to AZ, and then becomes BA, BB, BC, and so on. How far does that go? Well, that goes to ZFD. That's 2.5 million cells towards the right. So there are plenty of cells for you to be working with, and you are unlikely to run out of them. Not impossible, just unlikely. So we've got the cell. That's every single rectangle you see on here is called a cell. We've got the active cell. We've got the row reference, and we've got the column reference along the top. This cell has a specific reference, and we always describe it by the column reference followed by the row reference. So this cell has the reference F12. If we move to here, this cell has H14. So every cell has a unique reference, and that's really useful to know. If we look up here, this box is actually telling us that this is H14. It tells us H14, and anywhere I click, that cell reference is K4. This box is known as the naming box, and we can use that really effectively, and we will look at that shortly when we come to look at selecting cells. So what have I got? I've got cells, and I've got the active cell. The collection of cells all together on this entire page is called a worksheet, and you can see this one is called sheet 1. You can see a plus here. This is for adding a new sheet. Now I've got another sheet, again 2.5 million cells left to right, and just over 1 million cells top to bottom. So now I've got two sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2. Cell references are the same. So just like this one, I'm on H4. If I go to sheet 2, I can go to H4. But these are not the same H4. Despite it saying there it is, they are not the same H4. And we can work between sheets. So an Excel document can have one or more sheets. So what do we call it as a collection of sheets? Well, when we come to save Excel, and if we have a look up here, we can see this is Excel. I haven't saved it yet. I'll mention this in a moment. but I haven't saved it yet, and this is called book 1. So when I come to save this, it will want to save this as book 1. What I'm going to do now is we're going to save this. File. Because I haven't saved this before, save and save as will take me to the same menu. Once I've saved it once, they will take me to different places. But let's prove that. Let's go to the save as first of all. That's what the save as looks like. So let me come back off of this. So back to file, down to save. You'll notice it's jumped to save as, and now I've got my save as area. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a folder which I've got here called Excel Lessons, but let's help you create that folder. Let's go to Browse. I'm in my documents here. I've got my Excel Lessons there, and all I've got to do is go into that folder. How did I create it? I simply clicked on New Folder. A new folder appeared and I called it Excel Lessons. Let's go into the Excel Lessons folder, and there's nothing in there. It wants to call it book 1. That's because a collection of worksheets is called a workbook, and you can see that Excel Workbook. So I don't want to call it book 1. You need to call these something that describes what you're working on, and calling it book 1 doesn't help because the next one will be called book 2, and it won't take you very long to have book 1 to book 100, and someone will say to you, where's that spreadsheet? And you will go, I don't know, it's one of these 100. So let's call this lessons. I'm going to use this Excel spreadsheet simply to explore some of the ideas in future lessons. So I'm going to call it lessons. I've put it in my Excel Lessons folder, and I'm just going to click Save. Now remember, I said once I've saved it, I then have a different save and save as. Now because I'm using the internet to save my files, Excel has switched on autosave. That means that everything I do on here is automatically saved to this file, and this file is saved on the cloud. If I don't want that, if I want to just save it myself, I can switch off autosave. Now when I go to the file, I've got the save and save as again. If I click on save, it just saves it. If I go to save as, it then offers me the same option, and I can rename the file. The thing is, I've got this running on the web, and I'm quite happy to have autosave on. But every time we close this down, you're going to be prompted. If you haven't got autosave on, it would ask you to save it every time. So that I can show you how that works, I'm going to switch autosave off at the moment and leave it as that. So what have we got? We've got cells, the active cell. Cells are referenced by their column reference and their row reference. We have worksheets. We can have one or more. Every workbook must have at least one worksheet, but we can have hundreds of worksheets. We have worksheets that hold the cells that we're interested in, and it offers us even more cells. A collection of worksheets are saved as a workbook, and that's cells, worksheets and workbooks. In the next lesson, we're going to have a brief look at the ribbon toolbar. That's this up here. Until then, see you in lesson 5.